Okay, after these three exciting and inspiring talks, I'm sure that you are all convinced that we critically need open science to build a better and more sustainable world. I'm also sure that you are all convinced that among the most important challenges, if not the most important challenges that we have to overcome to achieve this ambitious goal, are related to human health. And if you want to get a global idea of the challenges that we have to overcome, I recommend you to look at this recent series published in the LANCET about the global burden of disease. Interestingly, this paper has been made open access through a grant provided by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The point I would like to make here is that if you look at what has happened between 1970 and 2016, we were quite efficient in reducing the mortality in early life, as you can see here. So this is related to a number of actions which have been made. On the other hand, and that's not surprising, if you look at the number of deaths later in life, it has increased over time. We are still dealing with a real problem in terms of infantile mortality, which remained quite high in terms of millions of deaths as compared to what is happening later in life. Now, if we concentrate now for the causes of disease later in life, as you can see here, we are still dealing with ischemic heart disease, strokes as major causes of death, but actually over the years, the incidence is decreasing through a number of measures, not only pharmacological, but also better diet. There is still a lot to be done, especially regarding the fight against obesity. So I would like to concentrate on the disease in red, because those are the diseases for which the incidence is increasing over the recent years: cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer, and multi-resistant tuberculosis. Now, we have to realize that to address those major diseases, we have really to implement dramatic changes in the way health care is provided, in the way medicine is developed. And you all heard about the precision medicine program, which was put forward by the Obama administration, which is very much about tailoring treatment according to the individual needs of patients. And these require dramatic changes indeed. In a nutshell, look at what is still happening in many diseases. They are qualified, for example, as Alzheimer or Parkinson. And this qualification is related to the name of a great scientist who made the discovery of the disease. But we know that actually the patients suffering from the disease are suffering from different type of disorders. But still we are giving them the same drugs. So it's not surprising that in some of them it's working fine, in others no effect, in others, on the contrary, adverse effects. More and more, and actually the cancer field is leading this revolution, we are tailoring the treatment according to biomarkers, according to analyses that are made on blood, urine, saliva, or tissue, for example, tumor tissues. And according to all these parameters, the patients are stratified in such a way that you can now propose to each of these patient subpopulation, if you wish, the right drug which will have the positive effect that you would like to get. Now, in order to develop these new drugs, we have to change the conventional model, especially in the pharmaceutical industry. This model is completely inefficient, As you can see, it takes time to develop new drugs, a number of failures, and a huge cost for the development of each new drug. So what's the solution to this? What will the new model look like? The first point is that we need collaboration, much more collaboration than in the past. And this has been clearly emphasized by Elias Zerouni, who has been a director of the National Institute of Health in the US, and who is currently the global R&D head of Sanofi. So it's collaboration across scientific and medical communities, and it's collaboration throughout the whole healthcare system. Indeed, it's quite clear that even if you put much more money, if you don't induce, if you don't foster collaboration, and I will come back to that, interdisciplinary collaboration, things will not change dramatically as they should. And clearly, to have this collaboration efficient, to promote this collaboration, it's obvious you need open science. You need open science to allow transparency and dissemination, not only of the data, but of the methods, of the tools that were used to generate the data. You need open science to ensure result reproducibility, which is still a major issue. I will come back to that in a minute. And finally, you need open science to ensure that the results can be translated not only into new drugs, but at the end in better health outcomes for our patients. Open science is needed because more and more we will analyze samples. We will then have to combine the data of this analysis with clinical data. We will have to combine, again, all this data and use sophisticated digital tools to analyze them. So sometimes the patients will be rather passive in terms of providing those data, as shown here. But more and more, the patient, him or herself, will become an actor of the generation of data, of reporting the data. And you all know what is currently ongoing for diabetic patients. Some of you might have Apple Watches to monitor a number of cardiac parameters, but this will certainly extend more and more with new tools developed for monitoring a number of key functions of the body. Now, this means that for the physician, for the healthcare professional, it will become more and more complex to combine all these data and to explain them to the patients and to take the right therapeutic decision. And if you want to be convinced of that, just read the New England Journal of Medicine published today, which is a good reading to be convinced of that. Now, efforts are made to develop the right platforms to indeed combine all these data from different sources and to use them in the best way, as, for example, this Cielo platform. They are extremely important because one key element to move medicine forward will be to revise quite dramatically the way clinical trials are done. And we will move from the current situation of the so-called randomized clinical trials to other type of trials requiring very sophisticated bioinformatic analysis, big data management. For example, you will have the umbrella trials in which patients suffering from the same disease will receive different therapies according to some specific biomarkers. And even more interestingly, you will see trials with patients with different disease, for example, different cancers, but sharing some biological or genetic characteristics. And those patients, even if they suffer from different disease, will receive the same type of treatment. So this revolution is ongoing and clearly requires open science. open science, big data management, to, at the end, develop healthcare on the basis of the outcomes that the new therapies are allowing. Now, collaboration, big data management, the critical point is to convince those generating the data that they have to share the data. And again, this brings us back to open science. And just to give you one example from the Innovative Medicines Initiative of the power of data sharing, when these 5 companies agree to share the results of their clinical trials in schizophrenia, they went to the conclusion that it's possible to reduce significantly the number of patients you have to enroll and the duration of observation of this patient to demonstrate the efficacy, the efficiency of a new treatment. Now, there are a number of initiatives ongoing to take advantage of this new approach. And one example is this Watson for Oncology program, which pretend that by combining different types of data and doing some computer analysis, you can predict the treatment that the patient should get, and that this prediction, in a way, is similar to the prediction that would be made, or the decision that would be made by the top oncologists in the world. Interestingly enough, recently there is a STAT investigation, you might know STAT, which is critically looking at different initiatives and institutions, and they show that actually, in their view, this tool is not really efficient. What does it mean? It means that it's not enough to open science, to share data. You must be sure of the quality of the data, and that's a critical point. And actually, when data are irreproducible, you see here the estimation of the cost of the investment, which have been made in research, which at the end proved to be irreproducible. That's obviously very bad for those making the investment. It's very bad for the patients that could be treated by an efficient treatment. It's inefficient, obviously, for economy, for the industry in general. And actually, in this paper, it was calculated that because of papers that proved to be false, that were ultimately retracted, you put patients at risk of receiving bad drugs. So to set standards and to promote responsible data sharing is indeed essential. As well as, and that's a message for universities, it's a message for publishers, it's a message for policymakers. It's not enough, again, to open. You have to check for the quality of the research that is published, and you have all to realize that this has a cost. So I would like to finish on this. You have to open, you have to be sure that the data are reproducible, are valid, are robust, but you have also to be sure that science is communicated in such a way that it is understandable. And the recent paper is a concern because it demonstrates that the readability of scientific papers over time is actually decreasing. It's a very interesting paper using sophisticated means to look at the readability of papers. And this becomes more and more important because, as it was already alluded to, it's important to communicate science not only to scientists, but also to society at large, to patients, and to children. Especially in this case, I was in Cambridge yesterday at this meeting on diabetes, where they present this booklet for children, for which a new type of trials is proposed, children with type 1 diabetes. And obviously, open science is an important aspect of this type of communication as well. So I will just end on this slide saying that, in my view, indeed, to move healthcare forward, we need open science with valid, robust data, but also we need education. Thank you very much.